Philipp Grubauer has cleared waivers, and there's one scene from The Matrix that really just keeps playing in my head. Not like this. Not like this.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle Kraken fans? If you're a Philipp Grubauer fan, my apologies. This is gonna be a tough one. It is a game day. It is a Seattle Kraken game day, and we will have another episode that dives into all of the things that need to happen against the San Jose Sharks and every other team for the rest of eternity when it pertains to the Seattle Kraken. But this episode is going to be, as promised, a deep dive into Philipp Grubauer being placed on and clearing waivers, which means that he is not, at least at the moment, a member of the Seattle Kraken, but instead a member of the Coachella Valley Firebirds. I want to let you know that this episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. This is tough. I can't say that Philipp Grubauer is my favorite goaltender of all time in the history of the Seattle Kraken or the sport of hockey. I will not lie and say that. I have also gone on record multiple times, everydayers and OGers know this, in saying the guy got a raw deal. The team has been saying that for the last handful of days, for the last handful of seasons. And what is also true is that he's had some gnarly starts. A lot of things can be true at one time, including that this doesn't sit well with me. If you didn't get the Matrix reference, that's honestly, it's a very heartbreaking scene. And to bring some levity to something that makes me a little bit uncomfortable and that I think went down in a kind of icky way, it's something that I actually go to a lot. Not like this. Not like this. That is Switch saying that as, all of the folks that have been pulled out of the Matrix realize that they have a mole in-house. Great movie, great scene. And unfortunately, it feels like a fitting scene right now. I have seen some of your comments in my video that went up last night, people asking a little bit more. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get into a deep dive, even though that episode that went up late, I explained that a little bit in the video, so apologies. But I had some travel delay issues, and I really needed to get some rest. But I knew I wanted to go deeper into this because I saw a move away from Philipp Grubauer coming. I never imagined, and I said this on the episode that posted overnight / this morning, I never thought it would go down like this. Placing him on waivers, I just never thought it would go down like this. So here's how I want to break down this episode. I'm going to give you what we know, what we have been told, because there was no practice yesterday. So today was the first time at morning skate that we were able to hear from the team. This episode is going to go down. I'm going to give you first just some reactions we heard from Adam Larson and from, of course, Dan Bilesma. I'll also integrate some comments that I've seen at the time that I'm recording from y'all communicating with me either on YouTube or on Blue Sky. Thank you so much for the comments. We're going to interact in that way. I'm also going to give you my best interpretation also with clips from today's media availability with why now, and kind of where do we go from here, as well as we'll wrap up So, okay, here's how this episode is going to go. It's a little bit different. Again, there will be a game day episode that we will have that I'm also recording today because it is a game day. The Seattle Kraken have got to get this game. Oh my goodness. They need a win so bad against San Jose. So we'll talk about that. That'll be another episode. But for this episode, and if you're watching on YouTube, I have this on the sidebar for you. But we're going to give you reactions. We heard from Adam Larson. We heard from Dan Bilesma. I heard from some of y'all in the YouTube comments. I love the YouTube comments. And also I got some feedback. So hopefully I was able to incorporate at least my understanding of the feedback. And I completely understand last night's episode was not meant to be a rant, but it kind of went in that direction. So I'm going to anchor this a little bit differently, given the feedback and comments that I got on YouTube and a few comments on Blue Sky. So I'm going to incorporate the reactions throughout the episode. Then, why this and why now? We're going to talk about that again, playing some of the clips from Dan Bilesma, breaking down my assessment and analysis, giving you some of what is coming down the pike for the Seattle Kraken. Where are the Coachella Valley Firebirds? What's going on there? And then, what is next? What is next for Philipp Grubauer? What is next for the Seattle Kraken? So that's the goal here on this episode, which is a deep dive. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you can watch yesterday's episode, but also just to anchor the conversation. Yesterday morning, Wednesday morning, it was an off day for the Seattle Kraken. It was announced that goaltender Philipp Grubauer was placed on waivers with the intention of having him reassigned to the Coachella Valley Firebirds. He had to go through waivers as of today, Thursday. I'm recording in the afternoon, kind of mid-afternoon, I guess, mid to late afternoon Central Time. It was announced earlier today that, of course, he did clear waivers, and we heard from Dan Bilesma. So that's what's going on. So first, and these are tough. I'm not even going to lie. Again, as someone, I wouldn't consider myself card-carrying member of the Philipp Grubauer fan club. The German gentleman has so many great qualities that I don't want to dismiss. It's been a little bit of a challenge with him with the Seattle Kraken, and we got to a really weird space. I feel weird about this. This is weird for me. I know it's a part of the business, but again, not like this. How it went down, just a little. Anyway, we'll talk about it here. We're going to hear from Adam Larson from Morning Skate. We'll also hear from Dan Bilesma.
Well, yeah, I think throughout 4 years, you kind of build that friend relationship. So it's always sad to see someone go down like that. And he'll most likely be back here. I don't know. It's just, if you look past the hockey side of things, it's a friend that's not here with us now. So it's for sure different. And it's tough for him. It's tough for us. It's tough for everyone involved. Get really close. You almost see your teammates more than your family during the season. So it's you get really close with guys, and yeah, just seeing on that aspect, it was tough.
Well, I think, seeing a teammate and a friend, and seeing a guy's original part of the Kraken, and seeing a guy you've had success with, and seeing him play good hockey, it's a difficult thing for, obviously, Gruby, but the rest of the guys as well, because this is ultimately a team game, and we all bear responsibility in the results of the team, and it's I think it always is a difficult thing to see happen to your teammate. That conversation happened with Ron and Philipp, and that's a private conversation. I'll say that.
So we'll get into a little bit more here, but we heard at the end of that clip, private conversation happened between Philipp Grubauer and Ron Francis. it didn't sound like from what Dan Bylsma said that any coaches were directly involved. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but just the way he answered that question, maybe it was something that happened between Philipp Grubauer and Ron Francis. I'm gonna more so talk about the facts and the reactions in this episode. Maybe a little bit into the, what happens now. I'll get into front office stuff because I've been saying it for a little while now. Actually, after that season that we made the playoffs, I said it every day, as OGers, I said we arrived earlier than expected. And now the onus is on the front office to figure out what is the path forward to do what we always said we were going to do, which is to, once we get to the playoffs, stay a playoff team. And it seems like we continue to get further away from that. And that's a front office question. I know some people don't like hearing that, but it is the truth. It is the truth. We have to talk about the front office. I tell you, I don't like having to entertain that at least part of this is perhaps a coaching issue. I don't think it's the overwhelming issue. I do think that there are some intrinsic things that are really motivation based that the players have to take responsibility on. But again, heavy is the head. You pay the cost to be the boss, all of these things. And coaches are going to be scrutinized because of a season like we're seeing. And I think you have to look at the front office because, again, they made a coaching change. They made roster changes. And this isn't great. This is not a good situation. I think we can all agree on that. I did say I want to get to some of y'all's comments. I really do appreciate the comments because I can tell from the comments that we're all feeling this is tough. This is tough for Philipp. We heard Adam Larson talk about you get to know these guys. You see them in season more than you see your own family. And Dan Bylsma followed in kind. This is tough. Other people in the comments saying, his family was in town. He made a heartfelt comment regarding a friend. This is tough. This is tough. And as we'll hear later on this episode, both from specifically from Adam Larson, Dan Bylsma also talks about accountability. And I will remind you that we've been hearing this for a while. This is Grubauer being made an example of, and there are reasons I think that is it what I would do, how I would do it? Probably no, but no one's paying me to be a GM of an NHL team. I can understand making a change. I mean, I've talked about a midseason trade. I've talked about, moving on from Philipp Grubauer after this season. So I'm not surprised in that respect. But again, not like this. Not like this. I don't like how it went down. I really just don't. I really don't. But we'll talk about that and more on today's episode. This is a special episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Game Time. And listen, if you want to attend an NFL playoff game, I mean, the Super Bowl is freaking coming up. The Super Bowl. And you want to get a good deal on tickets. I mentioned it the other day, but we're talking like several thousands of dollars just to be up in the nosebleed section. If you want to be there, you want to be there for the action. You want to get a good seat. Also, the Seattle Kraken, you've got the Seattle Storm, Sans Jewel Lloyd, it sounds like. But anyway, that's for another podcast. FanDuel can get you the right seats. And Game Time can get you the right seats. And Game Time has a new feature, called the Game Time Picks. And that makes getting tickets for events even easier. I've been talking a lot about sports, but also comedy shows, theater performances, concerts, things like that. The Game Time Picks feature filters out the fluff, so you only see incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create that account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken. You can follow me on Blue Sky. That's where I'll be. You can also email lockedonkraken@gmail.com if you want to respond to me directly. You can also, of course, respond on YouTube. That's where a lot of our community has gathered, including today, because I think there is a collective. Some people are mourning, some people are in there "I told you so" era, which is completely understandable because I'm kind of there with you too. This was something I think we all kind of saw coming. I just didn't see it quite happening this way, if I'm going to be honest. If I'm going to be honest, I didn't quite see it going down this way. So I want to read just a few of the comments that y'all have had, coming in. This one is really going to be interesting, especially given some of the clips that we'll hear in a minute. It's like Gruby is a scapegoat, but may have seen this coming. See, he will get bought out after the season. Francis really needs to make more moves. Alexiak, talking about Keandre Miller, that's a really interesting because the Rangers were kind of on having a wholesale. They have their own issues. I talked about the power play conversation yesterday. There's just like a lot of different things happening. Another conversation or another response being German-American. Grubauer was my favorite going into the season. Makes me sad he won't be a part of the team. It's crazy how in year 2, we were 1 game from the conference final. Now this, just disappointing. It's really tough for me. Also someone saying nothing new for me, a Trailblazers fan, Oregon Ducks fan, and a Seattle Kraken fan from day one. The only team that gives me hope is my LA Chargers at the moment. Sports fandom can be a painful thing when you really care. I like seeing that you care. Well, I do. I do. I didn't have an NHL team before I started this show, and the Kraken have become that. I mean, I do consider myself a journalist, but podcasting, you can kind of be among the people, right? We are together. We're in this. We hold fast. We stay true. And this is tough. This is really tough. And then Tom Buck, who is a great YouTuber you should check out. A lot of my gear recommendations I got from Tom. He's been on the show before because he's a huge Coachella Valley Firebirds fan. And so Tom chiming in here, I'm also at a loss, but I could end up seeing Gru play in person. So Tom, thank you for the silver lining, especially for Coachella Valley fans. And we're going to lean on you for some dark days, perhaps coming ahead in November. November has already come and gone. In February, excuse me. We'll get to more comments because there were some really great comments here. But again, why this and why now? And I think there are a few things to take a look at, and we'll hear from Dan Bylsma on this point. But what you'll hear from him is basically a summarization of that this team has not performed well. And we also know that there's the baked-in Four Nations break. I told you the amazing kid reporters that were in the locker room. I didn't catch the name of the reporter that was in the locker room and at the press conference with Coach Bylsma, but specifically asked, what do you want to see from the team in the 7 games at the time before Four Nations? And we are at that. The Seattle Kraken are trying to win 2 out of 3 games. They've lost their last 2 games. They need to win games. And this is an interesting, and again, this came from some feedback that I received and I completely understand it. I summarized this by saying, basically, I just ranted on the episode the other day, but I truly was mind-boggled. It was mind-boggling to me what was going on. But I want you to look at Philipp Grubauer's stats, and then we'll hear from Dan Bylsma. But Philipp Grubauer, his worst 2 seasons, I don't think it will be a surprise to anyone to know that his worst 2 seasons with the Seattle Kraken, including this year. Now, career numbers, he is a 0.908 save percentage, goals against average 2.66 on his career. If you look at this season, 3.83 GAA and an 866 save percentage. The only one that is even close to that in his career is season number 1 with the Seattle Kraken. That's the one at the top here. 316 goals against average, 889 save percentage. Again, it's not even really close. Former Vezina finalist, and all of his lowest numbers, as you can see here, are with the Seattle Kraken. On his Kraken career, he has never had a save percentage over 900. That the only time that has happened in his career is with Seattle. And that is problematic for him. But again, this isn't just a Philipp Grubauer thing. I do want to play a few more clips. We're going to hear from Dan Bylsma and Adam Larsson a little bit more on, what was kind of going on at the time that this change was made. So let's go to those clips now.
Yeah, well, it's difficult. I think, it's a performance-based business, and that comes under a big microscope, and that comes under big games and trying to win hockey games, and it can be very difficult trying to dig yourself out of that. And Gruby's been real diligent about it. He's worked hard. In the last few weeks when he hasn't had a ton of playing time, he's worked real hard at trying to get his game back, and a lot of respect in terms of how he's dealt with it and trying to get his game back. But it's can be and needs to be only seen as an opportunity now to do it for the next a little bit with not under the microscope. Get your game back, get your game right, get confident in who you are as a goalie and in your ability, and that's unfortunately it's the next stage for Gruby. Yeah, I think with the upcoming schedule, our games spaced out here every other day, and the Four Nations coming up with the break there, wasn't going to be a lot of practice time and a lot of playing time for Gruby. So going to CV will give him some practice time, give him some game time to try to get his game back to where we all know and believe it can be.
So we'll come back to some other clips. I want you to hear from Adam Larsson and from Dan Bylsma on what has to happen now as a team. But as you heard, this is effectively the reset. This is the reset for Philipp Grubauer. We've seen a reset for Oliver Bjorkstrand. Ty Cartier has been a healthy scratch in recent games. There's been so much going on with the team. I really haven't done a dive into that, but we've seen Cartier in the past alongside Oliver Bjorkstrand have a reset. Andre Burakovsky has had a reset. I think the Berkey reset, the Shane Wright reset, because of who Shane is, not because I thought it was a bad idea, but just the newsworthy. He's a part of the news cycle in a different way, I think, than some other Kraken players. Excuse me. And the Burakovsky reset until this one, those were the most jarring. Like, okay, this team is going to send a message, but we are so far from those resets. And I mentioned this, I don't remember if it was this week or last week. We're like, we're going to send a message, resets, blah, 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 blah. And all of that was really a placeholder for the trades that we've known, I've said have had to happen for at least 2 off seasons. I have said this roster needs to change, and it hasn't happened. And now the Seattle Kraken, whether it's because the Supersonics are coming back, whether it's because Ron Francis is feeling pressure or anything else, or you're just tired of losing, you're making a new head coach and a new coaching staff look bad. We are, it seems like, acting out of desperation. I don't know what the full strategy is here, because we just heard from Disco Dan, right, that this is an opportunity for Philipp Grubauer to get some more playing time effectively, right? he said with the games coming up in the break, there's not practice time. There's not games that Philipp Grubauer is going to get. There are 7 games for the Seattle Kraken with no back-to-backs. So assuming Joey Dax, I think we can definitely assume that Joey Decord is the number 1 goaltender. If you weren't there before, how you feeling now? 7 games, no back-to-backs. So no guarantee that Philipp Grubauer would get another start. Coachella Valley has 10 games in February alone compared to 7 total, and 4 of the 7 for the Seattle Kraken are before the Four Nations break. So that's what we're working with. 7 games for the Firebirds total, 7 for the Seattle Kraken next month. So I'm not counting, what we're going to see this week. I'm talking about next month, all of February. So I think what's also interesting is what are we seeing from Coachella Valley? And this is really interesting because Alice Stedska is the player that is brought up to effectively replace Philipp Grubauer. You can see 1,400 minutes. He has 8 wins, 12 losses. He's got a .902 save percentage. So, that's better than Philipp Grubauer. Then you have Coco here with I didn't mention Stezka has a 3.0 goals against average, 2.49 goals against average for Coco here, and you can see, or Coco here, excuse me, he's got a 909 save percentage. So Grubauer will be taking these. He'll probably, I can't imagine he won't be the go-to for the Firebirds. You heard it's about getting his game back, so that tells me that he's going to play, right? And of course, you have a Vezina Trophy finalist, a Stanley Cup champion 2 times over. You're probably going to play him in the AHL, which means that Coco will be working under and backstopping or working behind Philipp Grubauer in this scenario. I think, what does this mean, and where does Philipp Grubauer versus Joey Decord rank when it comes to goaltenders overall? Well, Money Puck has us covered there. So that's what you're seeing here. If this is right now ranked in the goals saved above expected, Connor Hellebuck, Logan Thompson sitting at the top. We just recently played Washington and Winnipeg, and hung in there with both teams, especially Winnipeg. But who's number 3 on this list? Goals saved above expected, Joey Decord. Now, if I hit this again and I toggle, who is the worst in the National Hockey League right now? Philipp Grubauer, minus 17.5. And I've said this before about expected. I talk about this with defense because remember, everyone was telling me the Seattle Kraken are a good defensive team and we're going by expected and all of these things. And I'm telling you, when I look at the eye test and I look at our gap control or lack thereof, how we play along the boards, 50-50 puck battles, all of those things, weak side or far side coverage, the Seattle Kraken have never been good in any of those categories. But versus expected and chunking in different goals and things like that into a computer, then sure. So I do want to say, at least for me, I will take anything that's with expected and extreme very advanced math. I take it with a grain of salt. That being said, even by my eye test, even accounting for that this Seattle Kraken team is not a very defensively disciplined team, Philipp Grubauer, and we talked about this when I was with the team, or I was not with the team, but I caught up with the team. Don't do me like 32 thoughts. I caught up with the team. I was able to cover the team when I was back home on the East Coast. And between me, some of the other media corps that were there, and some of our broadcast partners, we noticed that teams were shooting high glove side, right between the mask and the glove of Philipp Grubauer, with great success, trying to cherry pick that corner or pick that corner. And if you look at some of the goals, like that's he's exposed there. His size is exposed. Is he good in tight spaces when there are a lot of bodies in front of the net? I mean, he made some fantastic saves. He really did against Anaheim. But that first goal, right? He makes the first save, big juicy rebound, goal. So, there are things that, even though not everything is on Philipp, which makes this heartbreaking, it also is not surprising that there's a move and a reset for Philipp Grubauer. I don't know, like the packaging, the messaging, the optics of the reset for me are very gnarly. Again, not like this, but that's where we're at right now. Coming up, though, what does this mean for the Seattle Kraken? And I'm going to just, spoiler alert, the plan is, because Steska, if you look at some of the numbers, he might not even be the best goaltender on the Coachella Valley Firebirds right now, but he's the goaltender coming up. I don't think that there is any expectation that Steska will get starts in the NHL, which means that Joey Decord is going the full way, at least through the break, and then for however long it takes for Philipp Grubauer to get his mojo back, because this sounds like it's a reset. It's not an offload. It's not a transition away from, at least not immediately, for Philipp Grubauer. And that in and of itself, to me, is a little bit of a problem. It's a front office problem that I just don't know. I don't know what they're thinking. Anyway, I can only give you what we know, because there's a lot that I don't know, and there's a lot, quite frankly, that I don't agree with. But I'm just going to try to anchor this in what we know. We'll talk, or I'll read again some of your comments. I really do appreciate you responding, and I'll give you some numbers as far as what we can expect from Joey Decord in the next handful of games, looking at who we're going to be playing in the next 4 or 5 games.